For centuries, the legend of El Dorado has burned like a flame in the hearts of explorers, kings, and dreamers alike. Hidden deep in the wild jungles of South America, it was said to be a city unlike any other. A city where the very streets shimmered with gold, where temples and palaces blazed with jewels brighter than the stars, and where rivers carried treasures beyond imagination. The indigenous peoples spoke of a sacred land, ruled by a golden king who bathed himself in dust of pure gold before every dawn, glistening like a god before his people. When Spanish conquistadors heard these whispers, they were convinced that somewhere beyond the endless rainforests and towering mountains lay a paradise of wealth beyond measure. But as centuries passed, the search for this fabled city would not only consume fortunes and lives, but also weave one of the greatest mysteries of human history, a legend that still echoes through the jungles today. The story of El Dorado begins not in the jungles of South America, but in the bustling ports of Spain, where whispers of a golden kingdom spread like wildfire. Spanish conquistadors, battle-hardened from their wars in Europe and fresh from the conquest of the Aztec and Inca empires, believed destiny awaited them beyond the seas. With gleaming armor, crosses raised high, and ships packed with supplies, they set sail across the Atlantic, hearts burning with greed and ambition. But the ocean was merciless. Storms battered their sails, disease struck down their men, and doubts whispered in the dark corners of their minds. Yet the lure of untold riches silenced every fear. They were not merely sailing to a new world. They believed they were sailing into immortality, to claim treasures that would echo their names through the pages of history. When the weary ships finally reached the shores of South America, the conquistadors believed they had arrived at the threshold of paradise. Golden beaches stretched endlessly. Behind them, a wall of jungle so dense it seemed impenetrable. To the native people, these armored strangers were terrifying beings. Part men, part gods, wielding weapons of thunder and riding beasts never seen before. But to the Spaniards, the land was more than just soil and trees. It was a gateway to El Dorado. Every step they took into the unknown was driven by legends told in hushed voices. Rivers that glittered with gold, temples filled with treasures, kings adorned in jewels. Yet even as they marched inland, hunger and disease trailed behind them, and the jungle whispered warnings they refused to hear. For in this land, wealth and death walked hand in hand. It was here that the first tales of El Dorado reached their ears. Local tribes spoke of a great king known as El Rey Dorado, who would cover his body in shimmering golden dust and in a sacred ritual plunge into a holy lake. As emeralds and jewels were cast into the waters as offerings, the surface would glow like 1,000 suns. To the Spaniards, this was not just a ritual. It was proof of unimaginable riches. Yet to the native people, it was sacred, a divine bond between their leader and the gods, a ceremony of life and renewal. But greed has no reverence. To the conquistadors, every whispered legend was a map, every story a step closer to glory. They did not see faith. They saw treasure waiting to be stolen. But dreams of gold soon turned to nightmares. The jungles were merciless. Swamps swallowed men whole. Insects carried fevers that left soldiers delirious, and tribes who guarded their sacred lands struck without mercy. Food ran short, faith crumbled, and the men turned on each other. Greed, once the fire that drove them, became the poison that consumed them. Leaders were betrayed, comrades abandoned, and the jungle floor became a grave for countless nameless souls. Yet still, they pushed forward. For the vision of El Dorado, the city of gold, haunted their every waking moment. The quest was no longer about discovery, it was about survival and the desperate hope that somewhere, hidden in the endless green, a kingdom of gold awaited them. As the explorers moved deeper into the untamed wilderness, they came upon a river unlike any they had seen before. Its waters shimmered with an eerie golden reflection, as though the very essence of El Dorado was hiding beneath the surface. Birds circled high above, their cries echoing through the dense canopy, while the air hung heavy with mystery. One explorer leaned closer, whispering of legends that warned about this river, a sacred boundary that only the chosen could cross. Yet the thirst for riches pushed them forward. They built makeshift rafts, their hands trembling between fear and greed. With every paddle stroke, strange ripples glowed in the water as if spirits were watching. The jungle grew silent, broken only by the river's ominous current. For the first time, doubt crept into their hearts. Was El Dorado a blessing of gold, or a curse waiting to devour them? The explorers pressed on, deeper into the dense forest, but soon the air grew heavier and strange symbols appeared carved into ancient trees. The marks told a silent story, warning intruders that they were crossing into sacred land. One of the locals who guided them trembled, refusing to move any further, whispering about curses and vengeful spirits. Yet greed blinded the others. They pressed forward. As they advanced, the forest itself seemed alive. Vines coiled like serpents. Unseen animals howled from the shadows, and the wind carried voices that sounded almost human. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the silence became, until even the bravest began to question their path. Still, the golden dream of El Dorado drove them into the heart of danger. After days of struggle, the explorers stumbled upon ancient ruins hidden beneath a curtain of vines and moss. A massive stone temple rose before them, its entrance shaped like the mouth of a beast, as though swallowing anyone who dared to enter. Carvings of golden warriors and forgotten gods covered the walls, their eyes seeming to follow intruders with cold judgment. The men argued. Some wanted to turn back, others insisted the treasure lay within. A chilling wind blew through the temple's gates, carrying the smell of ashes and decay. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the nervous breaths of those who dared to step forward. With trembling steps, they entered the Temple of Shadows, their lanterns flickering against walls that seemed alive with warnings from the past. Inside the temple, their torches revealed walls encrusted with gold dust, glittering as though the stone itself bled treasure. At the center lay a vast chamber, where statues of warriors guarded a golden altar. Yet with every step, the air grew colder, and shadows moved in ways that defied reason. The explorers felt watched, their whispers swallowed by the silence. One of them reached for a golden idol, and in that instant, the ground shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling, statues seemed to shift, and a deafening roar echoed through the chamber. Fear gripped their hearts. Was it the curse, or was El Dorado protecting itself? The treasure was here, but so was something else, something ancient and alive.
As the quake subsided, half the explorers ran in terror, but the others clung to greed, scooping jewels and gold into their packs. Yet with each piece taken, the temple seemed to awaken. A low rumble echoed, and golden statues turned their faces toward the thieves. The walls began to close, and rivers of molten light poured from hidden cracks, sealing their escape. Screams filled the chamber as the curse came alive, punishing those who dared to steal. Only a handful escaped, dropping their treasures in desperation. while others vanished beneath collapsing stone. The survivors fled into the jungle, breathless and broken, realizing that the city of gold was never meant to be owned. El Dorado was not a treasure to take. It was a warning to respect.